Welcome to the virtual lunch. Today is Thursday, July 23rd, and this is virtual lunch number 94. Just tell us a little bit about your role as an evangelist at Litera, who is generously also sponsoring today's program.
I was a litigator at Gibson Nunn for 6.5 years. I left Gibson in 2012 to start Allegory, which is a litigation management platform. Knowing nothing about technology or entrepreneurship, in retrospect, I was very naive and built up Allegory for a few years and then sold Allegory to Integrion in late 2017, became the Chief Innovation Officer there, and left Integrion last August. Then joined Litera in March of this year. Got in just under the wire before the pandemic. I mean, no kidding. I'm an evangelist now at Litera, which I'm loving. And basically my role is comprised of 3 parts. One is just being out in the market and getting to know more and more people in the legal innovation world, making sure that I understand what the trends are, what's important to people, bring that information back to Litera, and then also talk with people about what Litera does. A second component is at a higher level, being out in the market and talking about what Litera does and doing things like this. And then a third component is helping them refine the applicability of their drafting tools to the litigation life cycle. So they've traditionally been focused on the transactional market, and I think I'm the first person there who has like a really strong litigation background. So trying to do a better job of tailoring their tools for litigators. I mean, I loved my job, but I had kind of rushed through school. I had done high school and college each in 3 years and became a lawyer because my uncle was a lawyer and loved it. And so it wasn't the most deliberate decision, and never thought I'd like it so much that I'd stick around so long and be on partnership track. And so I found myself in my 6th year being put on partnership track and thinking, if I'm ever going to do anything else, I should go do it now, because I can always come back and do those last 2 years to partnership. But if I just keep going straight through, I kind of know what I'll be doing every day for the rest of my life. At the same time, I had spent the last 6 years leading up to that. And it started when I was junior associate. When I was a first year, the partner was like, I want to see every document in the case, not just the hot documents. And if I wheel a cart of binders in here, he's going to kick me out. But I also can't say no. So I started digesting the documents into this giant Excel spreadsheet. And over time, how we digested information became more and more process-oriented and comprehensive. We started incorporating deposition testimony, and I was being asked to teach other associates how to manage litigations the way we were managing it on our cases. And this was all using Excel. I thought there has to be a better way. So around the same time as I was thinking about what I was going to go do for a while, a friend introduced me to some engineers, and I started talking about these ideas, and one thing led to another, and suddenly we were developing Allegory. And of course, as the founder of a company, you have to always be selling. And the hard part for me was I'm an introvert by nature. And so one of the things I learned when I started Allegory is I had to get out there. I had to learn how to network. I had to show up and be comfortable, jumping into conversations and meeting different kinds of people. And that's not something that came naturally or that I would have imagined that I would have loved. But that part of it, I actually really, really enjoyed. But the sales side of it always kind of got in the way, because I'm carrying Allegory and I'm like, got to make the sale. Anytime you're talking to someone who works at a law firm or is a potential customer, even though I really just truly enjoyed their company, the sales side of it was always kind of hanging there. I really wanted to keep having the opportunity to meet people and talk about legal technology, and I wanted to keep building those relationships, but I wanted to take the sales out of it. So I was very clear when I started looking for new jobs, that is not my thing. I don't want any part of it. I don't want any part of my compensation to be based on commission of any kind. But there's a whole team of people at Litera, and startup founders get asked this question. If you knew then what you know now, would you have started your company? And almost universally, everyone says, yes, absolutely. And I kind of always want to call BS, because then I'll have private conversations with founders, and I'm like, But especially when you're still in the thick of it, it's the answer you have to give, because you have to constantly be projecting confidence and, everything's great. Someone once told me it would be great if you could get out there and talk about some of the struggles in the legal industry, especially. You can't go out there and talk about all the struggles you're having, because law firms are already wary of bringing on a new technology from a startup. And one of the best parts about selling the business has been the ability to step back and be more candid and be more real with myself. My biggest piece of advice to would-be founders now is to do a better job than I did at understanding what you are getting yourself into, because people think that starting a company means throwing off the handcuffs, having the freedom to do what you love, and it could be less true. I've never felt more handcuffed in my life, because you don't get to do what you love because you have to hire other people to do what you love, and you have to do all the other stuff. I think it's healthy for people to at least know what they're getting themselves into. I think the world of people doing knowledge management and innovation within law firms, because they became such allies, and they are basically fighting the fight that we're fighting, but they're fighting it from inside the firm. I think you can be more candid with them. Traditionally, I think you were either talking to the attorneys who were very wary of technology, or you were talking to IT, litigation support, people who worked with technology but didn't really appreciate the startup new technology side of things. They wanted it to be perfect. The knowledge management innovation side of things is more about, okay, we have to bring technology in, we have to get feedback from attorneys. We're never going to get perfect technology if we don't participate in the conversation. And one of my projects at Litera has actually been, because I couldn't find it anywhere, trying to build an internal list of everyone at least at a high level doing knowledge management and innovation within law firms. And one of the things that shocked me is how few firms have knowledge management or innovation professionals at this point, because I kept thinking, and everyone around me was thinking, oh, this is a big wave and firms are getting on board. And actually, it's far fewer firms than you would think have gotten there. So we still have a ways to go. When I talk about the struggles, I don't just mean the technology. I mean, it's no secret that the technology doesn't have all the features that a company might want, but it would be much broader than the kinds of things that absolutely you want to be candid with your law firm clients about, and when you're partnering with them. That partnership attitude has come a long way. And I think in part that is because we have more knowledge management and innovation professionals who have the bandwidth to work more closely with smaller technology companies and go and collect feedback from lawyers, because lawyers aren't so great at giving feedback. And that's really the only way that law technology providers know how to iterate on their product, is to get the feedback from the end users. But there's been like this communication gap, I think, for a long time. And a lot of firms may have had people filling that, but I think now there are many more filling that with the KM and innovation roles, so that there is a more streamlined process for partnerships between big law firms and small startups. You hear all these strategies now for how to increase adoption, and much more appreciation for the adoption curve, because too often before, I think you would try to sell technology and people would assume, okay, I'm just going to turn it on and it's going to work perfectly. And that wasn't the case. Or, oh, we'll put it in front of the lawyers and the lawyers will know it's there. I mean, half the time the lawyers don't even know most of the technology that they have access to. There is a greater realization and a greater effort toward communication with the attorneys now, and making sure that they know the tools that they have, make sure they're using them, coming up with different kinds of games to like incentivize lawyers to use the tools, because it's that first or second or third time that's the hardest to get people in there and use it. I think the real opportunity is to learn about UX, UI, learn about how to like create user interfaces that lawyers will actually interact with, and what tools are successful and what tools aren't in terms of adoption. Because I think if you can pin that down, then you can always find a problem to solve. And then the other side of it is understanding the adoption side, knowledge management, innovation. How do those roles work within law firms? How are they getting people to actually use technology? Because to me, there aren't enough people focused on those things in legal innovation. There are people out there trying to create all these tools, but then there's a gap in the market. Everyone says like, oh, well, the new generation of lawyers is going to be more tech savvy. But I don't find that to necessarily be true. In fact, in some ways it's worse because they expect everything to work like an iPhone. Lawyers by nature are different than the general public. It's important to understand that. Much higher on skepticism, they're much higher on autonomy, they're much lower on sociability. As a profession, it attracts certain kinds of people. As legal innovators, we have to understand that and meet them where they are and stop expecting that lawyers will just change one day.
Alma Asay, everybody. Well done.
Thanks,
And
guys.
thanks to you, Alma. This was a privilege. And thanks to Litera for supporting this initiative.